Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about the ninth verse, and which is the last verse of Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai. Like the previous verse, this verse is on the surface, it's autobiographical, but actually what Bhagavan is really talking about here is about the grace of Aruṇācala, as he makes clear in the final line of the verse. The verse is, Ammayamappanam ayane bhumil akyalitu, ammahimayayan akadal venduyan andidumun, enmanamanni irutu padatil irutanayal, chinmayanam Aruṇācala ninarol chitramane. I'll go through it line by line. The first line is Ammayamappanam ayane bhumil akyalitu. That means bearing and tending me in the world as mother and father. That is, being my mother and father, you gave birth to me and you raised me, is the implication. Aki means means making, creating, begetting, giving birth to, or bearing. Bearing actually is more appropriate to the mother, but bearing and tending just goes together nicely. So that's how it's usually translated. But it actually, well, we've got no single word in English because begetting usually implies the father's role and bearing the mother's role. But it means giving birth to me and tending me, that is, caring for me, raising me in this world as mother and father. That implies as my mother and father. So it's Aruṇācala in the form of his mother and father who gave birth to him and raised him. That is the implication. Then the next line, Ammahimayayen akadal venduyan andidumun. That means before I sank, falling in the deep ocean, before I sank, before I sank, falling in the deep ocean, namely that worldly Maya. Ammahimaye means that worldly Maya. What that worldly Maya is referring to is the Maya of being a father or mother. Of course, as Bhagavan often made clear, it's not the outward role that we have in this life that is binding us. What binds us is our identification with that role. So if we identify with the role of being a mother or a father, that is a great Maya. But as Bhagavan isn't saying that being a parent, that alone is Maya, because as he often said, for example, he said grahasta, that's a householder, a family person who doesn't identify as I am a grahasta, is a better sannyasi than a sannyasi who identifies I am a sannyasi. So it's not the outward role that is the Maya, it's identifying with that outward role. So that is what Bhagavan is referring to here. Before he fell into that great Maya of identifying himself as a particular role, such as the role of a father or a mother, before that, then the third line is Enmanamanni iritu padatil iritaneal. That means Enmanamanni, money means, the main meaning of money is being permanently in my mind. It can also mean approaching my mind. So it's sometimes translated as entering my mind. That's one way of interpreting it, but the main meaning is being permanently in my mind, iritu means to draw, to attract. It implies drawing to yourself. Unpadatil irutine. That means you fix permanently at your feet. Padam is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word pada, which can mean state, and it can also mean feet. So we can take padatil irutane, you fix permanently at your feet, or you fix permanently in your state. Your state means a state of just being as we actually are, and that state is his feet. So the meaning of the whole of this, the first three lines form one sentence: bearing and tending me in the world as mother and father, before I sank falling in the deep ocean, namely that worldly Maya, being permanently in my mind, drawing to yourself, you fixed at your feet. So what that implies is bearing or begetting and tending me in the world as my mother and father. Before I sank falling in the deep ocean, namely that worldly Maya, the delusion of being a mother or father, being permanently in my mind and drawing me inwards to yourself, you fix me at your feet. That is, Aruṇācala is ever in our mind, but so long as our mind is going outwards, we don't feel the inward pull. But the more we surrender ourselves to him, the more we yield ourselves to him, the more we will come under the influence of his grace, which is that power that pulls our mind inwards. So that's what Bhagavan implies by iritane, pulling towards you, means pulling me inwards to yourself. The words to yourself are not there, but iritane means pulling in the sense of pulling towards oneself. So it's implied, pulling me towards yourself. And since Aruṇācala is ever shining in the heart, since he's, as he says, being permanently in my mind, since he's ever there in our mind, shiny as the pure awareness I am, as our very being, when we begin to surrender ourselves to him by trying to turn our mind inwards, he pulls us in, and thereby he fixes us at his feet, or in his state, in the state of pure being awareness, Satchit. Then the final line is the main point of the verse. I mean, why he says this? He's expressing the greatness of Aruṇācala's grace. So he ends this by saying, in the final line, Chinmayanam Aruṇācala. That means Aruṇācala, who are Chinmayan, he who consists of pure awareness. Ninnaro Chittiramene, what a wonder of your grace. This is such a wonder of your grace. It is purely by the grace of Aruṇācala that we come under the sway of that inward pull, the inward pull of his grace. That is, as Bhagavan often explained, grace is not something that comes from outside. Grace is ever shining in our heart as our own being. Grace is, Bhagavan and grace are not two different things. Bhagavan is grace himself, or Aruṇācala is grace itself. So that grace is that the infinite love that he has for us as himself is what draws us inwards, what pulls us inwards. But in order to be drawn inwards, we need to stop resisting. We need to stop trying to always go outwards. The natural flow of the mind is to always go outwards, to always go towards vishayas, objects or phenomena. So from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to sleep at night, the mind is always dwelling on vishayas, on things other than ourselves, on phenomena, on thoughts, feelings, emotions, perceptions, memories, and so on and so forth. So it's only that power of grace that can pull us within. And that power of grace works from within the mind, slowly purifying our mind and sowing in our mind the seed of love to turn within. So ultimately, when we turn within and merge back into our source, into our own being, then it will be clear to us that all our struggle to turn within was actually all the work of His grace. So those who have merged within, in their view, it's not because I did something. I did sadhana, I did self-inquiry, I surrendered myself, therefore I turned within. No, it's all the work of grace that becomes clear, that becomes more and more clear as we subside more and more within. The more we surrender ourselves, the more we see whatever effort we make to turn within, whatever love we have to turn within, is all only the work of His grace. So Bhagavan ends this verse by saying, Ninnaro chitramene. And when he says nin means your. Whose grace? Chinmaya Nam Aruṇācala. Aruṇācala, who is Chinmaya means what consists of Chit. Chit means pure awareness. So and Chinmayan is a masculine form of that in Tamil. So it means he who consists of pure awareness. So Aruṇācala, he who consists of pure awareness. And it's the grace of that pure awareness that draws us inwards. So this is a very fitting ending to Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai, because from the beginning, Bhagavan has, throughout this Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai, indeed throughout all of Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, Bhagavan is constantly talking about the grace of Aruṇācala. In the first verse, he talks about how Shakti, the divine mother, a goddess, was attracted to Aruṇācala and merged in him. So that's all, though he doesn't mention grace explicitly in that verse, it all implies the work of grace. The next verse, he talks about the meaning of the name Aruṇācala, and what does that, by meditating on that name, what do we achieve? It bestows liberation when thought of. So that's the act of grace. In the next verse, verse 3, he talks about those who are who are steadfastly seeking clarity. And that clarity is the sublime grace of the Supreme Lord who dwells in Aruṇācala. So if we are steadfastly seeking that clarity, by that grace we will subside in the ocean of bliss. And then verses 4, 5, 6, 7, they're all prayers for the grace of Aruṇācala. In verse 4, he prays that so that I do not perish as earth, thinking this filthy body to be I, looking at me with your cool, love-filled eyes, abide in my heart. That all implies the work of grace. In verse 5, he says, Aruṇācala, who are Chitswarupa, who have a very form of pure awareness, shining gloriously as Sonagiri, bearing with all my great wrongs, as a mother does for her child, give me your look of grace so that I do not fall again in this dissolution of birth and death, this samsara, but instead rise up on the shore. In other words, instead are saved. I'm just paraphrasing these verses now. In verse 6, he talks about Aruṇācala as Kamari, the slayer of carnal desire. All desires, including this carnal desire, they're all rooted in the false identification, I am this body. So Aruṇācala is Kamari because he destroys this false identification. And verse 7 is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful prayer of complete surrender, in which he prays only for nothing but a flood of love for your pair of feet. So that again, it's implying all the work of Aruṇācala's grace. And verse 8, he says that with his heart overflowing with joy, Aruṇācala, the Red Hill God, gave me his state so that the miserable distress in the wickedness of a vile senses perishes. So it's all about the work of grace. So very fittingly, he ends this song talking about the grace of Aruṇācala. He ends by saying, Chinmaya Nam Aruṇācala Ninnaro Chitramene. Aruṇācala, who have a very form of awareness, who consists of nothing but pure awareness. What a wonder of your grace this is. And then the next song, Aruṇācala Patikam, he begins with the words, Karunaya Lene Andani Yanakun. That is, by your grace, you who, by your grace, have taken charge of me. So he opens the Aruṇācala Patikam with the word grace. So throughout these 5 hymns, Bhagavan is constantly emphasizing the essential role played by grace. Without grace, because the very nature of ego is to go outwards, to, as he says in verse 25 of Uludunapadu, grasping form, it comes into being. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Leaving form, it grasps form. Such is the nature of this formless phantom ego. But if it seeks its own reality, it will thereby take flight. It will subside and dissolve back into its source. So the very nature of ego is to be constantly grasping forms, that is, phenomena, things other than itself. So it is only the grace of Aruṇācala, the grace of Bhagavan, that can give us the love to turn back within and to subside back into our own being, which is his true state, his feet that are ever shiny in our heart as our own being. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai.
There is a question on the verse,
Yes.
and Sanjay, would you like to answer it directly?
Yes,
I mean, would
yes.
you like to ask the question directly?
Yes, thanks. So, sir, you say that the worldly Maya here means the delusion of being a mother and father.
Yes.
So, but how do you come to the conclusion that when Bhagavan talks about worldly Maya, he's talking about the delusion of being a mother and father? It could be just...
He says, Mahimai, that is there the letter it means that worldly Maya. So what worldly Maya is he referring to? It's a reference to the previous line where he's talking about being a mother and father. But he says it's Aruṇācala himself. He said, being my mother and father, you gave birth to me and tended for me. So it's Aruṇācala in the form of his mother and father who gave birth to him. But ultimately everything is Aruṇācala. But if we identify, I am a mother, I am a father, I am this, I am that, that is the Maya. That is, Maya is nothing but ego. And ego is nothing but the false identification. I am this person. If we are a person, we identify with everything about that person. So if this person is a mother or a father, we feel I am a mother, I am a father. If this person is a sannyasi, I am a sannyasi. So Bhagavan he's not, we need to go deeper and see when he's talking about that Maya. Yes, it is referring to the Maya of being a mother and father, but what he's really talking about is not the role that this person, we take ourselves to be, what role this person has. That's not what he's talking about. What our identification with that role. So because we identify ourselves with the body, if we happen to be a mother or a father, we naturally feel I am a mother, I am a father. Is that identification is the Maya.
So basically, in a broader sense, the Maya is I am the body idea. And that's the root.
That is Maya. Maya is nothing but that.
That is Maya.
Yeah.
Then out of that comes all other Mayas.
Everything else, yes.
Yes. So
all false identification begins with this false identification, I am a body.
yes.
Because we identify ourselves as this body, we think I am a father, I am a mother, I'm Indian, I'm American, I'm French, I'm English, I'm German, whatever. I'm a Hindu, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Jain, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian. All these identifications, they all are rooted in this root identification, I am this body. And that is Maya. That is samsara.
Yes. So at the deepest level, that is samsara and Maya. Everything else is secondary.
Yeah, everything else is secondary.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, the other questions aren't particularly to do with the verse, so should we
Okay.
turn to the email? And
Yes.
come back to that. The question is it a help or a hindrance to be going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings where people are following 12 steps for spiritual awakening? I'm starting to question this approach, as since listening to Mr. James, I'm thinking AA steps are an inquiry into ego's troubles and past, which differs greatly from the I am inquiry.
Yes. That is true. This is the deepest investigation of all. In Bhagavan's path, we are not just investigating this person we seem to be. This person we seem to be has so many troubles and has a past, but these are all secondary. We are investigating the very reality of our seeming existence as ego. That is, as ego, we identify ourselves with a person, and every person has a story. Every person has faced so many troubles in life, and maybe has had traumatic experiences, and those traumatic experiences linger on. But these all apply to the person we take ourselves to be. As ego, we identify ourselves with the person, and this is the trouble we get into. But Bhagavan's path of self-investigation and self-surrender, we are investigating whether this ego is what we actually are. That is, as ego, we identify ourselves as a person. But Bhagavan is not only questioning the reality of the person we seem to be, he's asking us to question, to investigate the reality of ego, that which identifies this person as I. So Bhagavan's path of Atma-vichara, this is the deepest of all investigations. So there are so many different spiritual paths, so many different types of like I don't know exactly what the 12 steps of, is it 12 steps? I think it's 12 steps. He said there's 12 steps for spiritual awakening. But there's so many steps given in different forms of religion and so on. These all have their role to play, but they're not. They're all relatively superficial compared to this deep investigation that Bhagavan asks us to take to. So it is true, Bhagavan's investigation is much deeper than the 12 steps of recommended by AA. However, though that is the case, Bhagavan, on this spiritual path, Bhagavan supports us in many ways. He supports us most directly through his teachings, but he also often supports us indirectly in other ways. All of us have our own problems, our own weaknesses and things. So Bhagavan gives us the support we need. So if the person who wants to follow Bhagavan's path finds that they get help and support from attending AA meetings and maybe following some of the recommendations of those AA meetings, they can look upon this as help provided by Bhagavan. Bhagavan knows all our needs, and he provides help to us in so many different ways, most directly through his teachings, but indirectly in so many other ways, through the support of friends, through the support of relatives, through sometimes even through the support of strangers. So for many people who have problem with alcoholism, these AA meetings can be very supportive. So it is not necessarily that all such support is abandoned if we're following Bhagavan's teachings. If that support is helpful, then look upon it as support given by Bhagavan. It's of course not as deep as his teachings, but it may be helping in other ways, maybe contributing towards us following his deeper teachings. And because the support provided by AA is not necessarily incompatible with following the deeper teachings of Bhagavan. That is, we can be following the deeper teachings of Bhagavan and also getting support for our own particular weaknesses or past troubles or traumas or whatever it is. I mean, there's so many reasons why people become alcoholics or become drug addicts. And if we're following this spiritual path, we should, even if we don't have those particular problems ourselves, we should empathize with it, because the truth is that as ego, we are all addicts. Even if we're not addicted to alcohol or not addicted to drugs or anything, we're addicted to constantly dwelling on things other than ourselves. That is, as Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uludunaptu, the very nature of ego is to be constantly grasping form. That's constantly grasping things other than ourselves. From the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to sleep at night, throughout the waking state and throughout the dream states, we are constantly dwelling on things other than ourselves, attending to things other than ourselves. This is a type of addiction. So we come to Bhagavan's path to free ourselves from this addiction to depending on anything other than our own being. So if someone is following this path, even if they don't have particular problems like alcoholism or drug addiction or anything, we can understand how these things, and we can empathize with how these things happen. So for people who have had trouble with these sort of addictions in the past, sometimes groups like AA can be very supportive. And as I say, we can take such things as support given by Bhagavan. More indirect support, but it's also ultimately whatever support we find in life, whatever kindness we find from, whether from friends or from strangers or from whoever, it's all ultimately help given by Bhagavan. Ultimately, Bhagavan is the sole helper, the sole support. But he may help and support us in so many different ways. So for many people who've had problems with alcoholism, this AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, gives them support and gives them help that they desperately need. So just because we're following Bhagavan's path doesn't mean we should give up all such support. So long as it is helpful to us, let us just accept that support as support given by Bhagavan. Moreover, regarding the 12 steps, I don't know what, as I say, I don't know what those 12 steps are, but some of them may be helpful, some of them may be not so helpful. When we are following Bhagavan's path, of course, Bhagavan's path is what is central. But if we find some support to us in following this path by following one or more or even parts of certain elements of those 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's no harm in using that. So it's possible to it's possible to follow a sort of via media between strictly adhering to the AA way and dropping it entirely. That is, between that, we can take certain elements that are useful, whatever is useful in the support given by AA, by all means, avail of that those elements. And elements that you don't find useful, you can discuss, you can just set aside. So, I mean, ultimately, it's up. We each have to judge for ourselves. If we're in such a situation, so long as we find we're getting any support from AA, by all means, avail of that support. There may be a time when it becomes no longer necessary, then we can leave it. But we shouldn't rush to leave such support, because particularly for someone who's had problems with alcoholism, such people are, well, we're all vulnerable in our own different ways, but such people are particularly vulnerable. So it's not always advisable to drop all such support. It's not that we are depending on something other than Bhagavan. Bhagavan is supporting us through whatever support is given by AA. I hope that is a clear answer to that question. Does anyone have any further questions on this?
So the next question is, I notice my mind getting drawn into commenting on and taking sides on world events and world leaders a lot lately. 2 sentences from Bhagwan's teachings in paragraph 19 of Nanyar helped. Quote, "It is not appropriate to let one's mind dwell excessively on worldly matters. To the extent possible, it is not appropriate to intrude in others' affairs. I wondered if you ever had reminders that helped the attention turn within when being swayed or caught up by a particular type of vasana. Thank you."
Yes, this is a problem we all have, and particularly the present state of the world. Naturally, to the extent to which we allow our mind to go outwards, we do get it's very easy for us to dwell upon all these things, and to get caught up in that. But this following Bhagavan's path, it requires moment by moment vigilance. If we allow, that is, Bhagavan's path is a path of constantly attending to our own being. If we allow our attention to slip away towards other things, we rise as ego, and as ego we rise with all our vasanas, and we have so many concerns, insecurities. We may have different political views, we may have so many different views we may have. And it's very easy to get caught up in all these things. On Bhagavan's path, we are slowly trying to wean our mind off its concern with anything other than knowing and being what we actually are. But this is a gradual process. So when we find our mind is constantly being drawn out by, for example, the present state of world affairs it's it's very natural for us as a person to be concerned about what is happening in the world, all the injustices, the wars, and so many things, and all the politicians and the way politicians are behaving and what they're doing. It's very easy for us to get caught up in all these things, but it's important to remember that, as Bhagavan says, there's one Parameshwara Shakti, one supreme ruling power, divine power, that is driving all these things. We, from our perspective, we say this is good, that is bad, but this is all our judgments according to our own likes and dislikes. Ultimately, everything is happening as it's meant to happen. Wars and so many injustices, these have been happening from time immemorial. This is the nature of samsara, the nature of embodied existence. There will always be individuals who try to get more power and dominate over others and exploit others. And so this is just the nature of this world, the nature of samsara. So, and we are very susceptible to getting caught up in this ourselves. So if we want to follow Bhagavan's path, we need to be constantly remembering that our real mission, we cannot change this world. We cannot, however concerned that we are about what is happening in the world, what can we do to change it? There's nothing. All we can do, if we are wise, is to turn within to the source, because ultimately, as Bhagavan made clear, all of this is ultimately just a dream. It's our own mental fabrication. This all appears when we allow our mind to go outwards. So if we are wise, we need to try more and more to turn within and to give up our concern with all these things. Of course, we're pained when we see injustices. Of course, we're pained when we see how the myriad ways in which people suffer in this world. And a lot of this suffering, it's caused by, we cause each other so much suffering through our greed and people and trying to take more for ourselves than for others. And this leads to all sorts of conflicts and wars and everything. But if we want to go beyond all these things, the root of all these problems is our rising as ego. And Bhagavan has given us a simple solution to put an end to the rising of ego. Simply, so long as we allow our attention to go outwards, we are feeding this ego. When we turn our attention back within, to the extent to which we attend to our own being, we as ego thereby subside and merge back into our being. So we should always remember that our real mission is to turn within and to subside back into the heart, to be as we actually are. So that advice that Bhagavan gives us in verse 19, in paragraph 19 of Nana, that's very, very important advice, because that is, Bhagavan has, in so many ways, he's cautioning us against allowing our mind to go outwards, because the more we go outwards, the more we get caught up in all this samsara. I hope that was a clear and adequate answer to that question.
Thank you.
I think that was quite an important question, because I think people are very, very caught up in all
I
this.
think we're all just a greater or lesser extent distressed by what is happening in the world at the moment.
Yes, I find it very interesting, because I'm a bit of an outsider to all this, and so many of the lessons, sort of, which because for Europe and the West, their own identity and identifications are of a certain kind based on a history of really being top dog. So the idea of maybe disidentifying a bit with one's identity, one's whatever values, and
Yeah.
seeing that we have to take on board other people's interests. We have to be a bit careful about these powers. Because in India, you've got China, you've got Europe, you've got sort of the US, and you have
Yeah.
to step back a little bit and see how to manage without getting into a big fight.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult, I think, and I think a bit of humility in all of us to be able to see clearly so we don't get into fights is always useful.
Yeah.
A calm mind.
Yeah. Ultimately, all these problems are the problems of ego. Different egos are trying to assert themselves in different ways. But all these many egos we see outside are nothing but a reflection of our own ego. So if we want to put an end to all these egos, all we need to do is to turn within and allow this ego to dissolve back into its source. And as you say, all this is to do with identification, because we identify ourselves as I am European, I am American, I'm Canadian, I'm Indian, I'm whatever. We feel threatened by different forces that are there in the world, that are threatening our particular identity.
Thank you. That was extremely fantastic summary. So the next question is, I do get a lot of headaches while focusing on the self. I know it might sound silly, but this might help me. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard many people saying things like this, that they get headaches or that they get this problem or that problem. Some people say they get pain between the eyes, or they get different types of troubles people have. But it's important to remember that all these troubles we face are not actually attending to ourselves. That is, when we try to attend to ourselves, because of our reluctance to subside back within, vasanas are our own inclinations. Vasanas rise in so many different forms, and sometimes these vasanas arise in the form of things like headaches and so on, that distract us away from attending to ourselves. So we shouldn't try to fight these things. We should just try more and more to not pay heed to these things, but just to try more and more. Who is it who is experiencing this headache? Who is it who's experiencing this or that? Whatever it may be, there cannot be a headache without one who is experiencing that headache. Who is that one who is experiencing this headache? The more we turn within, the more these external problems will drop off. But it requires patience and perseverance. And sometimes it can be very challenging facing some of these things, but we just have to persevere.
The next question. Would you say there is or is not truth to the idea that some beings came down to this plane from Devaloka and some came up from Narakloka?
As Bhagavan said, this world is in our mind, and all other worlds are in our mind. Ultimately, the world is a projection of our own vasanas. So it is true, when we look at the world, there are people with demonic qualities and people with divine qualities. I mean, that is, we all have a mixture of what Bhagavan refers to as subha and asubha vasanas. But these are all relative terms. Some vasanas are more subha, some are less subha. Some are more asubha, some are less asubha. So these are all just relative things. But as Bhagavan says in the 19th paragraph of Nana, there are not two minds, a good mind and a bad mind. Mind is only one. It's the vasanas that are either subha or asubha. Subha means the agreeable, favorable, and asubha means what is disagreeable. So, and Bhagavan says, when the mind is under the sway of subha vasanas, we call it a good mind. When it's under the sway of asubha vasanas, we call it a bad mind. So when we look at the world objectively, it's very clear some people have a predominance of asubha vasanas. Some people have a predominance of subha vasanas. But behind that, essentially, we are all the same one being. So we need to see beyond all. That's why Bhagavan had equal love to all. The people who came to Bhagavan, they weren't all saints. All types of people came to Bhagavan. There were good people, bad people, all types of people were there. But Bhagavan's love was equal to all, because Bhagavan doesn't see us as the person we take ourselves to be. He sees us as we actually are. In other words, he sees us as himself, and so he loves us all as himself. That's why Bhagavan could be equally kind and loving to someone we would normally judge as a bad person as he was to someone we would normally judge as a good person. Because he saw beyond this. He saw this is all just a play of vasanas, and that essentially we are all just that pure Satchit, which is Bhagavan himself. So ultimately, where do we all come from? Not from Devaloka or Narakaloka. Ultimately, we all come from Satchit. That's the source from which we've risen, and that is where we need to subside and merge back.
Yes. The next question is, please review the process of leaving the body in all its aspects.
We leave the body every night when we fall asleep. But when the end of this body's life comes, that is, we know when we fall asleep at night, or we're pretty sure, but when we fall asleep at night, we're going to wake up the next morning. So nobody fears going to sleep in normal circumstances. Death is something that is very frightening for all of us, because we are entering the unknown, as it were. As I say, we're so familiar with identifying ourselves with this particular body. Even in dream, though the body we experience as ourselves in a dream is obviously a different body to this body, but it seems to us to be the same body. We seem to have the same identity. If we are Michael in the waking state, we're Michael in dream. We seem to be the same person. We have the same set of memories and the same identification. But death means it's an end of this person we take ourselves to be. So it is very threatening for many of us. Well, for all of us to a greater level. Most of us don't think much about death because it's not a comfortable thing for most of us to think about. But if we're following Bhagavan's path, actually remembering about death is a great blessing. And we should be willing to welcome death, but merely the death of the body is not the final solution. The final solution is only death of ego, because if the body dies before ego dies, ego will continue having. This whole life is a dream, and ego will continue, and ego is the dreamer. So ego will continue dreaming until it itself ceases to exist. That is, after this body drops off, we'll dream some other body and to have some other life. So as far as detailing death, if you're talking about death of the body, it's nothing but the, well, we know from a biological point of view, the body ceases functioning, whether because of old age or disease or accident or injury or whatever it is. For some reason, the body is no longer functional, so it ceases. That's from an external point of view. From an internal point of view, we are forcibly separated from this body. We're no longer able to continue holding on to this body because it's no longer able to function. Based on the evidence of people who have near-death experiences, actually, when people undergo a death, an experience close to death, some people describe it as a very terrifying experience, but the majority of people can describe it as being something very, as if a great burden is taken off their shoulders, which is what it actually is. This body is a burden, but we will take another. But if ego hasn't died, we'll take on another burden. So when you ask for a detailed description of what death is, and it's not very clear exactly what you're asking for. But one thing that is clear: death of the body is not the real death. The real death is death of ego. Ego is that I that identifies itself as I am this body. Ego doesn't die when the body dies, because if one body dies, it'll project and identify itself with another body. So the real death is only death of ego. And death of ego is nothing but being aware of ourselves as we actually are. Because ego is a false awareness of ourself. An awareness of ourself as I am this body, which is not what we actually are. So ego can be destroyed only by correct awareness of ourselves. In other words, only by being aware of ourselves as we actually are, will we cease to mistake ourselves to be anything other than what we actually are. So knowing and being what we actually are is death of ego. And that is the only real death. I don't know whether I've answered that question adequately or not. If the person who asked the question wants to ask anything more, please do so.
I asked the question, and
yes.
Thank you. Isn't that a belief, because we have no proof that the ego doesn't care about taking on another body? Isn't that a belief that we have? How can we? We can't prove it. We can't prove it because,
well, we can understand by rational analysis that this body that we now mistake ourselves to be is not what we actually are. Because if this were what we actually are, we couldn't be aware of ourselves without being aware of this body. But clearly, in dream, we're not aware of this body. This body is supposedly lying in a bed, but we are walking around. We identify ourselves with some other body that's walking around and doing all sorts of things. So the fact that in dream we're aware of ourselves without being aware of this body means this body is not what we actually are. And in sleep, we continue to be aware of ourselves without being aware of any body or mind or anything other than ourselves. So what we are is something different from all these phenomena with which we now identify ourselves. That we can understand by, obviously there's not it's not proved in the sense that people try to find scientific proof, objective proof, but by analyzing our own experience, we can clearly understand that we are not what we seem to be. But whenever we rise as ego, namely in waking and dream, we always identify ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So we have no reason to suppose that ego will cease to exist just because the body ceases to exist. Because the fact that we are able to dream and be completely unaware of this body indicates that this waking state is itself just another dream. So when one dream comes to an end, so long as the dreamer survives, the dreaming will continue. So yes, you can say it's a belief, but it's a belief based on rational analysis of our own experience of ourselves.
Thank you. Many of us will not be fully enlightened when we leave the body.
Yes.
Although most of us put so much effort into following these teachings, which are the most beautiful teachings. So if we haven't fully understood that, how to make that break from people we love and this experience and all of that we've experienced in all the years that we've lived.
That is, when we're following this path, we are slowly weakening. If we're following the path properly, we are weakening our Vishaya vasanas. That's the inclination to go outwards and grasp things. And we're strengthening the Sat Vasana, the inclination just to hold on to our being and thereby to subside back within, to surrender ourselves. So this, when the body dies, what ego takes with it are its vasanas, its inclinations. So whatever spiritual progress we've made in this life will continue, that is, in the next life, will continue from where we started off. That is the vasanas we can consider like a bank balance. That bank balance will come with us wherever we go. So we don't lose the spiritual progress we've made just because the body drops off. So once we're on this spiritual path, the progress will continue. If we don't reach the end of our journey in this lifetime, we'll continue in the next lifetime. We'll continue the same journey from where we left off in the previous lifetime.
So it's so we understand then that our loved ones and this experience that we're leaving is an illusion or a teaching that we've been given to progress our path.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. The people that have come into our lives, the experiences to test us and to help us along this path.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael, for being a channel of Bhagawan, and we so appreciate.
I'm just pointing out what Bhagawan himself has taught us. I'm not really doing anything.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, I just wanted to add one point to this.
Yes.
So last year, Michael, I underwent this life between lives, QHHT, past life regression therapy, and all these things, just to be curious to understand, to see what the past lives are. So the thing is, like someone has clearly pointed out, these are all nothing but the mind itself, the koshas beyond the physical body. Because, Michael, I stand corrected, because Satchit is beyond the perception of the mind or beyond the perception of anything, right? It is Siva, the pure consciousness itself.
Yes.
Because people in the Western world, in the US, mostly in the US, UK and all this, they have developed different frameworks that they believe that there is an individual soul, and at the end, these souls are the part of the bigger soul that calling as a god, and they have taken the data from different places. They know that it is I am, is the correct I mean, to say it as a God, and that is what the soul is. But then they made it in such a way that $1,000 would get you enlightenment. You can speak with the higher self, and all these things have happened. I'm just pointing out that I was also a victim of it. I paid a couple of quarts to it, and then I've also paid, like, dollars to experience all these things. So I mean, there are like so many things, Michael.
Yes. That is, the mind will interpret these things in so many ways, and there are so many different types of religious and spiritual beliefs in this world. And that includes also the materialist belief, but that's again just another belief. If you believe that there's nothing beyond the material world, that is as much a belief as if you believe in God, or you believe. Even to say you believe in God, there's so many different conceptions people have of God. So which God do you believe in? What's your idea of God? So, but ultimately, the one thing that is certainly true, as Bhagavan made clear, is our own being. We can doubt everything else, but the one thing we cannot reasonably doubt is our own being. We cannot doubt I am. And that our being and our awareness are one and the same. That is, they're not two things. That is, that which is aware I am is I am itself. So the being and the awareness are one and the same. This is the only thing, as Bhagavan pointed out, that exists always. It shines always. So that alone is what is real. Everything else is unreal. So the metaphysics Bhagavan has introduced us to is extremely simple. That is, Advaita metaphysics generally is very simple, but often in many Advaitic texts they complicate it unnecessarily. Bhagavan has made it extremely simple. There is one thing that is real, you are that. But when you rise as ego, you project a body, identify that body as I, and through the 5 senses of that body, you project a world. But what is actually real is the essence of ego. That is, ego is the adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. What is real is only I am. The adjunct, this body or this person, is unreal. It's just a projection. The
That's
one thing that exists in all 3 states is only I am.
And that is infinite, that is limitless.
It is limitless, right? Yes. That is, all finite things are objects of consciousness. But consciousness itself, where can you put a limit on consciousness?
Right.
Consciousness, as it is unlimited. Everything that appears in it is limited. But Bhagavan analyzed it even deeper. The consciousness in which things appear is not the pure consciousness. It is ego. It is that consciousness that has limited itself by identifying itself as I am this body. So what we need to do is to cast off these limitations, cast off this false identification, and be as we actually are, which is the infinite Satchit.
Correct. Thank you, Michael.
Satyam Jnanam Anantam. That's the description given in the Upanishads of Brahman. Satyam means what is, the being, what is real. Jnanam is the awareness, the chit, the pure awareness. Anantam means infinite. There's no limit. It's only phenomena that are limited. And those phenomena appear only in the view of ego, which is the awareness that has limited itself as if it's a certain phenomenon, namely this body. So Bhagavan's metaphysics are so simple. And the ultimate truth is, if we investigate this ego to see what it actually is, we will find that we have always been as we actually are. So we have never risen as ego. Since we've never risen as ego, there's never been a world or anything. So the ultimate truth is ajata. That is the ultimate simplicity. Ekkameva advitiyam, one only without a second.
I mean, only the thoughts makes us feel that we are alive. Even in the deep sleep, there is no thoughts, there is no world, nothing is there, right? It's
Yes,
like
but
infinite.
as Bhagavan said, the world is nothing but thoughts. Even ego, the one in whose view this world seems to exist, is itself a thought. What is not a thought is only the pure Sat-Chit. But ego is a thought because in essence, it's nothing but that pure Sat-Chit. It's that pure Sat-Chit mixed and conflated with adjuncts. That's why it's called Chit Jada Granti. It is that not formed by entangling Chit with Jada. Of course, Chit itself is never entangled, but in the view of ego, we as awareness seem to be entangled with this body. So if we want, we can complicate this in any way. And that's what all religions and all philosophies ultimately are, just unnecessary complications of this basic truth. Because people don't want the simple truth. Because if we are attached to this body and to the appearance of the world, if we want to take them to be real, the last thing we want to admit is that everything is simple. So because of our, as Bhagavan said, because like the infatuated lover who foists chastity upon the prostitute, we foist reality upon this body and world because of our infatuation with them. But the truth is they have no reality at all. What is real is only I am. Yatatmai uladu Atma-surupamandre, as Bhagavan says in the 7th paragraph of Nana. What actually exists is only Atma-surupa. Atma-surupa means ourself as we actually are, what we actually are, the pure awareness, the pure being awareness, Sat-Chit, I am. Jnanamam tane me, he says in the 13th verse of Ulladu. Oneself who is jnana, who is pure awareness, alone is real. So the truth is very simple. The mind loves to complicate things. And then we want to learn about past life, whether we go into past life regression, whether we can experience what we experienced in the past. Bhagavan said, worrying about the past and future without knowing the truth of the present is like trying to count without knowing the value of unit 1. Supposing I say I've got a million rupees, it means nothing unless I know the value of 1 rupee.
So the next question is, people who have near-death experiences have not left all the koshas, I think. Am I correct? They have just left the sthula sharira, that is the gross body, and not the other 4 koshas, the other 4 sheaths of bodies. Could you please comment on this?
Yes. But even in their, they've left, that is in a near-death experience. There are different types of near-death experience, but for example, one type of near-death experience that is sometimes reported, people maybe undergo an operation, and during the operation, their body dies. But later they're resuscitated and they come back to the body. People who've undergone such experiences sometimes say they're aware of looking from above, looking down on the operating table, seeing their body there, seeing the surgeons trying to revive them. And they may even be aware of what a conversation that is going on. Maybe the doctors go and tell their relatives that the condition is very serious, we're trying to revive him or her. They may be aware of all these things. But when they report all these experiences, they're reporting from a particular they're reporting that they're experiencing from a particular location. So when they see the body lying on the operating theatre and they're aware of themselves as if they're above the operating table, somewhere up near the ceiling or something. And then they may be aware that they're in some other room hearing the conversation that's going on there. So though they may not have the sthula sarira, the gross body in this physical form, they still have a subtle gross body, because how else could they experience themselves being located in a particular location? So the fact that they're in a particular location in the physical world, viewing all these things, means that they have a subtle physical body. So yes, that is throughout the waking and dream states, we have all five sheaths are there. In certain cases, the physical body may be in a very subtle ethereal state, but it's still, we have a physical body because we have a physical location. Only in only in deep sleep are we devoid of all the five sheaths, because when ego, all these five sheaths exist only in the view of ego. So when ego rises, it experiences all five sheaths. When ego subsides, all five sheaths subside along with it. That's why Bhagavan says in verse 5 of Ulladu Napadu, Udul Pancha Kosa Uru, the body is a form of five sheaths. Therefore, all five are included in the term body. Because we never experience one or more sheaths to the exclusion of the other sheaths. We always experience all five.
The next question. During the practice of self-inquiry, sometimes I come to the stage where I lose body consciousness. Is that how it is supposed to be? And is it dangerous? Did Bhagavan ever mention this? Thank you, Michael.
Again, it's very difficult to, when anyone tries to describe what they experience during self-investigation, it's very difficult to assess from the words what it is actually they're experiencing. That is, what exactly does it mean when we say we lose body consciousness? We certainly lose body consciousness in deep sleep, but we don't think, oh, I've lost body consciousness. That is, they just, the body and world completely withdraw from our awareness because we as ego have subsided, and this body and world exist only in the view of ego. So during self-investigation, the attitude we should have is let the body appear, let it disappear. Let the world appear, let it disappear. Our only aim in self-investigation is to know who am I. In other words, we need to be focusing our whole attention on ourself alone. If our whole attention is on ourself alone, we won't even notice whether there's body consciousness or not. We go beyond all these dualities of the appearance or the disappearance of the body. That is our aim. So if we are aware of the appearance of the body, who is aware of it? If we're aware of the disappearance of the body, who is aware of it? We need to be constantly going deeper and deeper within. That's what matters. Otherwise, we're just giving a label to our experience. Oh, I lost body consciousness. That's just another idea. To whom did this idea occur? That is, anything that can be described in words is not what we actually are. So any description of what we experience during self-investigation is something other than ourselves. What we actually are is ineffable, anivachaniya. It cannot be expressed in words. It cannot be conceived by the mind. We can know ourselves only by being ourselves. That means it's a knowledge quite unlike any other knowledge. Because knowing anything other than ourself is a mental activity, whereas knowing ourself is just being ourself. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Upadesha Tanai iritale tanne aritalam. Being oneself alone is knowing oneself, because oneself is not two. Tane rendatradal.
There's a question which is posed to everyone, but I think it's sort of relevant here as well. The question is, the world is from mind. Question is, whose mind? Is there one ego or are there many egos?
There seem, when we look outwards, we see many people. And in our view, every person seems to be an ego. But because we as ego mistake ourselves to be a person, we mistake every person to be an ego. So long as we're looking outwards, there seem to be a multiplicity of egos. But all those multiple egos appear in the view of one ego. So ultimately we have to come to recognize that there's only one ego in our experience, that the ego is the experiencer. There's only one experiencer. Everything else is what is experienced. So who is this one ego? If we investigate that, then we will find actually there's no ego at all. We seem to be ego only so long as we're looking outwards. When we look back within, there's no such thing as ego to be found. But it's no use saying there's no ego so long as we're looking outwards. It's only when we can, that is, we need to experience the non-existence of ego, which we can experience only by looking within. So when Bhagavan made it very clear, when he said the world is nothing but a projection of ego or projection of mind, it's a one mind. In a dream, there's only one dreamer. The dreamer mistakes itself to be a person and sees so many other persons. So every other person seems to be seeing the same world the dreamer is seeing. But when we wake up from a dream, we recognize all those many people, including the person we mistook ourselves to be, were all just a part of our dream. The whole dream existed only in our view. Likewise, all this, there's not any person who is experiencing the world. It's only this I that has identified itself as I am this person that is experiencing the world, and therefore experiencing the appearance of so many other people, and all those other people seem to have ego just like we have ego. But even to say we have ego, who has ego? It's the ego who has identified itself with the body. So it's not that we have ego, we are ego, or we seem to be ego, so long as we're experiencing anything other than ourselves. Someone has written, Manonasa is permanent, there is no mind for the sage, the self does all, the self does nothing. The self means our self as we actually are is just pure being. The doing all happens only in the view of ego. Sometimes it is said God does everything, but Bhagavan made it clear in the 15th paragraph of Nana. Yes, God does do everything, but he does everything without doing anything, just by being as he is. That means everything that happens by, as he expresses it there, Isan Sanidana Visesha Matratal, by the mere special nature of the presence of God. So by his mere being, everything is happening. But he is doing nothing. He is just pure being. And he is what we actually are.
Michael, when Bhagavan speaks or talks to us, or when he was there, that was not the mind. Like, how does he talk? Or
in our view, Bhagavan had a body, and therefore he had a mind.
in our view,
exactly, that's the point. When Bhagavan asked about, when people asked Bhagavan about the actions of the jnani, he said, in whose view? It's all in our view only. Because we identify ourselves as a body, we identify a certain body as this body is Bhagavan. But what Bhagavan actually is neither the body nor the mind. He is the one infinite whole, the pure Sat-Chit. Someone earlier, I saw something popping up, someone saying that Bhagavan gave teachings in words. Yes, Bhagavan gave teachings in words. Those words are pointers. The words themselves cannot reveal the truth. Bhagavan said the ultimate teaching is only silence. Silence means the silence of pure being. But the words, Bhagavan's words are pointing us to look back within. So they're pointing us in the right direction. In order to know the truth, we need to look within. Without looking within, no amount of words can reveal the truth to us. Bhagavan's words are useful precisely because they direct us to turn our attention back within, to see what we actually are.
The next question is, the consciousness that we actually are, does it possibly have any experiences? Thank you.
Yes, it has one experience. I am. In other words, it is aware of nothing other than its own being. That is pure awareness, pure consciousness, whatever we call it. And its experience is immutable. It never undergoes any change. Because change can occur only in time. But in the view of pure awareness, there is no time, no space, nothing. There is just pure being, pure awareness. Sat Chit Ananda.
The next question is there instruction at the moment of actual death?
Yes. In all the bhakti traditions, it is considered very important that at the time of death, the mind should be fixed on God. But the mind will be, we can fix our mind on God at the moment of death only if we've been dwelling on God throughout our life. If we've been dwelling on other things, those other things will come to our mind at the moment of death. But what is God? According to the Advaita tradition, God is nothing but our own being. So thinking of God means attending to ourselves, turning our attention back within. As Bhagavan says in verse 8 of Upadesha Undiya, Anya bhavatin avanahamaham ananya bhavame undipara anatinam utam undipara. Anya bhava means meditating on God as if he's something other than ourselves. Ananya bhava means meditating on him as nothing other than ourselves, with the understanding avanaham, he is I. So the ananya bhava in which he is I, that is best among all. So it is good, of course, if one is living a life of devotion, to think of God at the last moment is very good. But if that devotion will purify our mind and lead us on, but we will know God as he actually is only when we know him as ourself, and we can know him as ourself only by knowing ourself as ourself as he is what we actually are. So we can know him as he actually is only by knowing ourselves as we actually are. So the best thing to do at the moment of death is to attend to ourselves. But if we've not been persistently practicing self-attention as much as possible throughout our life, when the time of death comes, other thoughts will come and distract our attention away from ourselves. That's why every moment of our life should be a preparation for death. How to prepare for death? By attending to ourselves.
The next question is, in the presence of I am, waking state, quietness of the ego, is the inner feeling of bliss separate from the body and emotions, awareness itself?
Anything that appears and disappears is not real. So any bliss that appears and disappears is not the real thing. That is why in self-investigation, we're not looking for any particular experience. If any experience appears, to whom does it appear? That is, we need to turn our attention away from whatever appears back towards ourselves. Then only will we find that bliss which is eternal, namely the bliss that is our own real nature. That never appears or disappears. That is always as it is. It's ever shining. So anything that appears, to whom does it appear? To whom does it appear means we don't just ask to whom it appears. We need to investigate to whom it appears. In other words, we need to investigate ourselves, the one to whom it appears. We need to turn our attention back to ourselves, the one to whom any phenomenon appears.
There is a question which is addressed to everyone, but perhaps it's relevant. The question is, it's evident that the sense of doership and enjoyership, ahankara, has completely dissolved in someone like Bhagwan. But does the sense of chidhabhasha, which is reflected awareness, remain until Mahasamadhi? Bhagwan had expressed that his body felt, this just continues a little bit. Bhagwan had expressed that his body felt pain during his illness. Does that mean Chit Abhasa, reflected consciousness, remains until Mahasamadhi, even though the sense of doership has completely?
Chidabhasa is nothing but ego. Ego is the seeming awareness, but abhasa means a semblance or a likeness. Sometimes it's translated as a reflection, but that's a secondary meaning. If you see your likeness, if you see a reflection in the mirror, you're seeing your likeness. So that abhasa literally means the semblance of a likeness. So ego is like consciousness, but it is not the real consciousness, because the real consciousness is aware of nothing other than itself. Ego is aware of many things that do not actually exist. So being aware of things that do not actually exist is not real awareness. Real awareness is only the awareness that is aware of what actually is, which is awareness alone. So being aware of anything other than ourselves is chidabhasa. So chidabhasa is ego. Ego, that is, for Bhagavan, there's no ego. We say that is in our view, because we must, as Bhagavan himself clarified on so many occasions, because we mistake ourselves to be a body, we mistake the jnani also to be a body. So we mistake Bhagavan to be a body. As a body, he says, yes, there is pain, but it's not other than me. But for Bhagavan, there's no pain at all. For what Bhagavan actually is, it's only for the body. And that body exists only in our view. What Bhagavan actually is, as he says when he was asked whether he's an incarnation of this God or that God, What he said is, Ariyati Tarajivara Dahavari Jaguhail Arivairami Paramatman Aruṇācala Ramanan. Aruṇācala Ramana is the Paramatma that exists as, blissfully exists as awareness in the cave of the heart lotus of all different jivas, beginning with Hari. So from the highest God to the most insignificant insect, that which is shining as awareness, in other words, the awareness I am, that is Aruṇācala Ramana. That's what Bhagavan really is. It's only in our view that he seems to be a body. That's why why did Bhagavan appear outwardly in the form of a body? He appeared outwardly in that form in order to tell us to turn within and to know ourselves as we actually are. Because only by knowing ourselves as we actually are can we know him as he actually is. So all questions that we ask about the person that Bhagavan seemed to be is all, any answer that is given is a concession to our ignorance. It's only in the ignorant view of ego that Bhagavan seems to be a body. That is not what he actually is.
In a sense, then one could say that the body feels pain, but Bhagavan doesn't feel pain because of, in that sense, because he's not identified with the pain in any way.
But even the body feeling pain is in our view. So, I mean, it's, people ask Bhagavan so many questions about his state. However he answered, people would, that is, we cannot understand Bhagavan. In Uladunaplu, Bhagavan says, how to understand the state of the one who is aware of nothing other than itself. Bhagavan is not aware of anything other than himself. So whatever we ask him, we are asking about the person that he seems to be. So of course he has to come down to our level and say, yes, there is pain. But that's all a concession to our ignorant view of taking him to be of mistaking him to be a body. And we mistake him to be a body because we mistake ourselves to be a body. That's why he appeared in the form of a body, in order to tell us to investigate ourselves and see what we actually are. Only when we see what we actually are will we know what he actually is. Because he is what we actually are.
The next question is, like Darwin discovered natural selection, is it possible the self is utilizing this attribute of existence?
The self is not doing anything. It's not utilizing anything. It's just being as it is. The self means, the self is not something. The self means ourself. We are, what we actually are is just pure being. It's only when we rise as ego that we utilize things. All happenings occur only in the view of ego.
The last question. Michael, you have said the Sadhu Om would have prevented you from taking him as a guru. Why is that if he was a jnani? Why are some jnanis not gurus? Thank you.
We need to understand Bhagavan's teachings. What Bhagavan taught us about guru in the first sentence of the 12th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, Kadavalam Guruvam Unmayil Verala. God and Guru are in truth not other. What does that imply? That implies Guru is not a person. Guru, there's no one other than God is qualified to be Guru. So in most traditions, most sampradayas, there's a parampara. There's an original guru, and then that guru selects appoints a successor, or if the guru doesn't appoint a successor, the followers appoint a successor, and there's a lineage of gurus. In the case of Bhagavan, there is no lineage of gurus, because Bhagavan taught the guru is not the body. Guru is none but God himself. So after Bhagavan, there is no need for any other guru. If any disciple of Bhagavan claims to be a guru, they have not understood Bhagavan's teaching. What is guru? Guru is not just the physical form. And Bhagavan himself repeatedly said, Guru is what is shiny in you as I. That is the real guru. So Bhagavan appeared outwardly in that form to turn our attention back within to the real guru that is ever shiny in our heart as I. So Bhagavan's sampradaya, if we're to call it that, is a very unusual sampradaya. It's a sampradaya without a parampara. We don't need any guru other than Bhagavan.
Michael, would you be kind to start Akshara Ramanamālai series from the next coming meetings?
From the next meeting, I'm going to be starting Aruṇācala Patikam. I will eventually come back to Ashtakam. Sorry, to Akshara.
Okay.
But it is such a deep work. I don't want to rush into it.
Okay.
I want to prepare for it. So if it is Bhagavan's will, I will complete what I had started some years ago. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to do, I want to complete and post online. Like I posted this Navamaṇimālai. I want to post translations of Patikam, Ashtakam and everything. So I'm working towards it.
Michael, I had one question. I think that did not make it to today's cut, if I may ask the question.
Okay, yes, certainly.
The true self that we are, as per Bhagavan's teaching, I wonder that consciousness or that true self, would it have any experiences whatsoever? I don't know.
I think that question was asked. No, it doesn't. It's only the only true experience is the experience I am. So pure awareness is not aware of anything other than its own being. It's aware I am and nothing other than I am.
Got it. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, Suman, I did ask the question, but I think it was perhaps, a brief.
Oh, sorry. I missed to listen.
It's an important point.
Don't worry.
It's an important point, so no harm in repeating it.
Yes. It's actually a very important question. So I think, we could do with having it answered twice. It's a good. So let's close today's meeting. And then please...
Sorry, can I just say something? Bhagavan's teachings are actually very, very simple. All we are doing here, all I'm doing here is just repeating the same thing again and again and again. But there's no harm in repeating it because we need to our minds are very complicated. To grasp the pure simplicity of Bhagavan's teachings, we need to have it dinned into us again and again and again. So all I'm doing in these meetings, I'm just repeating what Bhagavan has taught us, which is very, very simple. Sorry for the interruption, Shalini.
So let's do Bhagavan's mantra 3 times. And after that, please stay behind everyone who wants to start a WhatsApp group. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya.